She unfolded the crisp white envelope, and the number under new monthly rent stopped her cold. It was exactly double the amount that had been on every check she'd written for the past 9 years.
He's counting on me to panic.
Miss Vance, I hope you are calling to arrange the payment.
You know, this unit is stabilized. Why are you sending me this?
There's no record of any old lease. Pay the new rate or start packing.
She listened to his silence for a beat, then ended the call without another word. Her hands were completely still. What he didn't know was that Deborah had been preparing for this exact moment since the day she moved in. She reached into the dark closet and pulled down the small fireproof box from the top shelf.
Not yet, but very soon.
She set the box on the kitchen table and twisted the key. The lid lifted smoothly. Underneath a stack of old receipts, she found the yellowed pages of her original lease from 9 years before. The top of the first page carried the bold heading, Rent Stabilization Rider. 9 years ago, on move-in day, she had recorded a walkthrough of the empty apartment. The video file was still on her laptop, time-stamped and unedited. On screen, her younger self panned across the kitchen, stopping at the open cabinet door. There, taped inside the cabinet, was the same rent stabilization rider, clearly legible.
That's it. That's the proof.
She placed both the paper lease and a USB copy of the video back into the fireproof box. She locked the box and slid it back onto the high closet shelf. The evidence was solid. The battle, however, was just beginning. A sharp knock hit her door just after 9 the next morning. 3 hard raps, a pause, then 2 more. Through the fisheye peephole, Gregory's face warped into a smirk, and the corner of a manila envelope jutted into view.
I know why you're here, Gregory. You didn't need to knock like the police.
Then you know you owe double this month. Here's the receipt. I expect payment by Friday.
She kept her hands firmly at her sides. The envelope dangled between them.
I have the original lease, Gregory. The one that says this unit is rent stabilized.
There is no original lease on file. You're paying the new rate, or I start eviction tomorrow.
He's bluffing. He thinks I'll break. He's wrong.
Gregory shoved the envelope into her reluctant hand and turned away, keys jangling with every step. Deborah watched him disappear down the stairwell, then closed the door and reached for her phone. It was time to call a lawyer. Before she could dial, a sob echoed in the hallway. Deborah pocketed her phone and opened the door.
Deborah, you got one too, didn't you?
She raised a crumpled white envelope, identical to the one Gregory had just forced into Deborah's hand.
The doubling letter. Yes. He tried to intimidate me too, just now.
He can't do this. I've lived here 15 years. I'll never find another place.
Deborah guided her back into Linda's apartment, where the 2 envelopes lay open on the kitchen table, side by side.
And Mr. Alvarez on the 3rd floor, he got one too. You should have seen his face when he opened his.
I have the original lease, Linda, and a video from move-in day. This building is stabilized.
Linda's breath caught. Behind her glasses, a flicker of fragile hope ignited.
I'll show you everything. We're going to fight this together. All of us.
The next afternoon, Deborah sat across from Ruth Caldwell in a small law office. The desk held her evidence folder, sealed tight.
You said you have the original lease and a video. Let me see the lease first.
Deborah slid the yellowed document across the polished wood. Ruth scanned the stabilization rider and nodded slowly. She opened her laptop and played the walkthrough. Ruth watched the cabinet rider appear, timestamp clear.
The metadata is untouched. This video is a silver bullet, Deborah.
He expects double payment by Friday. Can you stop him before he files eviction?
Pay the legal rent into escrow. I'll file a complaint and get a hearing. He won't be evicting anyone.
This is really happening. She's not asking me to walk away.
Deborah signed the retainer without hesitation, her pen pressing firm strokes through the afternoon light. The battle had gone legal, and Deborah now had a sharp attorney in her corner. But the process would grind slowly. By the time Ruth filed the complaint, Gregory already had the legal notice in his hand. He read it standing in his cluttered office, jaw tight.
She actually lawyered up. Fine. Let's see how long she lasts without heat.
That evening, Deborah returned home to find a bright yellow pay or quit notice taped to her door. She pulled out her phone and photographed the notice from 3 angles, her movements swift and practiced. Down in the basement, Gregory twisted a rusty valve. The boiler shuddered and fell silent.
The radiators are stone cold. It's barely 50 degrees in here.
Again, she documented everything. The thermostat reading, the silent pipes, the time and date.
He's making the case for us.
She emailed the new evidence to Ruth immediately, attaching the photos and a detailed timeline. The escalation had begun. Gregory was pushing harder, but every move fed Deborah's growing file of evidence. The next morning, Deborah walked through the glass doors of the rent board office, a thick folder pressed under her arm. In the waiting room, she sat rigid among strangers until a clerk called her number. The top sheet read, "Tenant complaint, illegal rent overcharge and constructive eviction." The clerk stamped each page, then slid a thin slip of paper back across the counter with a hearing date.
6 weeks. That feels like a lifetime.
Outside on a bench, she called Ruth, who picked up on the first ring.
6 weeks is fast for these cases, Deborah. Trust the wait. We'll use the time to gather statements from the other tenants.
Patience. I've held this apartment for 9 years. I can hold for 6 more weeks.
Back home, she circled the hearing date on her kitchen calendar in red marker, the ink bleeding slightly. The waiting game had begun, and the building grew colder with each passing night. 2 days later, Linda found her own pay or quit notice and came straight to Deborah, her voice shaking.
He gave me 30 days. I've got nowhere to go.
An hour later, the 3 affected tenants gathered in the cold community room, clutching their matching envelopes.
Gregory offered me $5,000 to just walk away. I could use that money.
That's how it starts. If you take it, he'll pressure Mr. Alvarez next. We have to stay united.
She pulled out her phone and showed them the video still, the stabilization rider taped inside the cabinet, clear as day.
This proves the building is rent stabilized. Gregory has no legal standing to evict any of us.
Linda stared at the screen, then at Deborah. The worry in her eyes slowly hardened into resolve.
All right, Deborah. I am with you. No buyouts. We fight together.
The group made a shaky pact. They would not accept any buyouts, no matter how tempting the offers became. Gregory's patience had thinned to a blade. He drafted a final buyout offer and sent it straight to Deborah's phone. The message read, "Final offer $7,500 to vacate in 30 days. Take it or I'll make this much harder." Deborah read it once, then dropped the phone onto the kitchen table like it was poisoned.
He's panicking. Every threat he makes is just more evidence.
That night at 11:30, her phone buzzed again. Gregory's name filled the screen.
You think you're clever, Miss Vance? You're going to regret making this public.
Deborah said nothing. Her thumb hovered over the record button, then pressed it. The app confirmed silently, capturing every word of his rage.
This building will empty. You'll be out on the street with nothing.
The call ended. Deborah stopped the recording and immediately sent the file to Ruth. Now Gregory had handed her another rope. The night before the preliminary hearing, Deborah climbed the stairs slowly. At her door, the glint of something wet stopped her. Her key refused to enter the lock. A clear, hardened epoxy sealed the cylinder like glass. She pulled out her phone and photographed the vandalized lock from several angles, her breath clouding in the cold air.
This is Gregory. He's moved from threats to actual sabotage.
She called the police. A patrol officer arrived 20 minutes later and inspected the damage with a small flashlight. The officer took notes, photographed the lock officially, and handed Deborah a case number. No suspects were named. After the officer left, Deborah dialed Ruth. Her voice was calm but tight.
I'll pick you up. You're not staying there tonight. Pack a bag and wait by the entrance.
An hour later, Deborah locked the fireproof box in the trunk of Ruth's car and slid into the passenger seat. Behind them, the building stood dark and silent. The hearing was now hours away, and the sabotage had raised the stakes to something personal. The preliminary hearing convened at 9 a.m. Ruth Caldwell sat at the petitioner's table with stacks of evidence. Gregory and his lawyer sat opposite, tense.
Your Honors, my client has faced a doubling of rent, a heat shutoff, even a sabotaged lock. We ask for an injunction against further harassment.
She played the recorded call, then the walkthrough video. The board leaned forward as the stabilization rider filled the screen.
The lease is unverified and possibly fraudulent. There is no record of stabilization.
The video timestamp is unaltered. The rider was physically in the apartment 9 years ago. That is proof.
The chairperson turned to Gregory and asked directly about the boiler shutoff.
It was a routine maintenance delay. Nothing malicious.
The board read, "Effective immediately. All harassment must cease. Heat and hot water must be restored. This injunction is temporary pending full hearing." When Ruth pressed for a stabilization ruling, the chairperson deferred. It would require a full evidentiary hearing, 6 weeks away.
Not done. But at least he can't freeze us out anymore.
A week after the injunction, Gregory's lawyer filed a motion claiming the stabilization rider was a forgery, scraped from templates online.
A stall tactic. The video's timestamp will bury that argument. They're buying time.
That paper looks 10 years old because she soaked it in tea. We want a forensic audit.
Ruth opened her laptop, and the walkthrough video filled the screen. The cabinet, the rider, the timestamp. The still frame showed the exact same rider, taped to the same cabinet, on the day she moved in.
9 years, sitting in a box. That's its own kind of truth.
This board orders a forensic document examination of the original lease. The hearing is continued until the lab report is complete. A clerk approached with a sealed evidence bag. Deborah slid the yellowed lease inside without hesitation.
The ink, the paper, the fibers. They'll place that document right back in your cabinet.
Another wait. But this time, the evidence rests in a lab, and Gregory just gave up his last move.
2 nights after the evidence handoff, Deborah heard a soft knock. Linda stood in the hallway, her face blotched and pale.
He offered me $10,000 cash to drop my case and move out by next week.
Deborah pulled her inside, and Linda sank into a kitchen chair, shaking. The cash offer had cracked something.
I almost took it. I cried for an hour, but then I thought of you and Mr. Alvarez, and I couldn't.
You didn't take it. That's what matters. And now we have another weapon against him.
He tried to buy my silence, but I'm not silent.
Deborah pulled out a notebook and a pen. Together, they started drafting a sworn statement for Ruth.
Put down every word he said. The time, the place, the look on his face. He didn't just offer, he pressured.
An hour later, the statement was finished, signed, and dated. Deborah photographed every page. When she sent the images to Ruth, the reply came within minutes. "This is witness tampering. He just handed us the final nail."
Deborah, Gregory filed a motion to dismiss. He's arguing the lease was never properly recorded with the prior owner.
Can he actually get the case thrown out on a technicality?
It's a long shot, but if the board buys it, they could dismiss before we even present the stabilization evidence.
The words landed like a punch. After everything, a paperwork flaw could undo months of fighting. She went straight to Ruth's office, where a pile of legal documents already covered the conference table.
We counter with the original title chain and the old management's records. I'll file an opposition tonight.
Deborah insisted on seeing every word, spent hours at her kitchen table cross-referencing dates and filing stamps. Ruth filed a 14-page opposition, attaching receipts that proved the lease was properly recorded 9 years ago. The next week, the board issued a preliminary ruling. Motion to dismiss denied. The lease shall be considered valid, pending the full hearing.
We're still alive, but my nerves are shot.
In the days after the ruling, the building's temperature shifted. Not the heat, the people. A neighbor she'd greeted for years now stared at the floor when she passed. Near the mailboxes, a voice she recognized muttered, "She's stalling the sale, making it harder for the rest of us." The words landed like cold water. Deborah kept walking, her face betraying nothing. Inside her apartment, she leaned against the closed door, the silence pressing in. That evening, she noticed a folded piece of paper on the floor. It read, "We believe you. Don't stop. No name, no apartment number. Just that." But it was enough.
One person, that's all it takes to feel less alone.
She placed the note in the fireproof box beside the original lease, evidence that not everyone had turned away. The hearing was still weeks away, but the small kindness had recentered her. She was not fighting alone, even if it felt like it. A courier delivered a thick envelope from Gregory's attorney. Inside, a single-page settlement offer. The offer read $30,000 to vacate within 30 days and surrender the original lease. This offer expires in 72 hours.
30,000. That's more than I've ever had at once in my life.
She paced the narrow kitchen, paper trembling in hand. The number screamed a way out.
Ruth, they offered me 30,000 to walk away and hand over the lease.
It's a significant amount. I can't tell you what to do, Deborah. Only you know what your piece is worth.
If I take this, what happens to Linda and Mr. Alvarez? He'll crush them next.
Her gaze moved to the fireproof box on the high shelf. Inside lay 9 years of truth.
Tell them the lease stays with me, and so will I.
She hung up. The unsigned offer lay on the table like a discarded weapon. There would be no retreat. The morning before the final hearing, Deborah sat in Ruth's office among stacks of evidence binders, checking every page.
The lab report is in our favor. The forensic audit authenticates the lease. Tomorrow, we finish this.
I never thought I'd be grateful for a 9-year-old video of my kitchen cabinet.
The message read, "You should have taken the money. Tomorrow, you get nothing."
Empty threats. He has nothing left to throw.
She blocked his number without a word, then silenced her phone for the night. She opened the fireproof box one last time, the lease, the video USB, Linda's statement, all in order.
The note that said, "Don't stop," that stays in here too.
She locked the box, slid it onto the shelf, and set her alarm for 6 a.m. She stared at the ceiling until sleep came. Tomorrow, the board would see everything. And so would Gregory. The final hearing convened at 9 sharp. Deborah sat beside Ruth, the fireproof box open on the table between them.
Your Honors, the evidence is overwhelming. The original lease, authenticated by the forensic lab, and a video proving the stabilized status from day one.
She played the walkthrough video, freezing at the cabinet. Then she held up the yellowed lease, the stabilization rider clearly visible.
I kept that lease because I was taught to document everything. It never occurred to me that someone would try to erase my home. Gregory claimed there was no record. But there is, and it's been in my fireproof box for 9 years.
Gregory's attorney asked if she had any motive to fabricate the rider. Deborah's answer was immediate and level.
The only person with a motive here is Gregory. He wants this building empty to flip it. I just want to stay in my home.
A board member leaned forward and asked when she first saw the rider. Ruth pulled the video to the exact second. Gregory's smug expression had cracked. He stared at the table, jaw tight, as his lawyer shuffled papers. After 4 hours, Ruth rested. The board recessed to deliberate. The room held its breath. The board returned 45 minutes later. The chairperson sat, laid a single sheet on the table, and adjusted the microphone. The board read, "The unit is legally rent-stabilized. The original lease is valid and authenticated. The attempted rent doubling is declared null and void." The board further read, "Gregory Dempsey is fined $25,000 for constructive eviction and harassment. He must restore the legal rent immediately. All eviction proceedings against Deborah Vance are dismissed." Gregory's mouth fell open. The color drained from his face, and he gripped the table's edge. Beside him, his lawyer set down his pen. There would be no appeal.
It's over. We won.
The chairperson struck the gavel once. The preliminary injunction became permanent. Ruth squeezed Deborah's hand under the table, and Deborah finally let herself breathe.
This isn't over.
The board ignored him and adjourned. Gregory stormed out, but the ruling was official and final. Deborah Vance would stay in her home at the legal rent. Gregory stood in the courthouse hallway, shouting at his lawyer. The fine was due in 30 days. 3 days later, a realtor pounded a "for sale" sign into the front garden. The luxury condo flip was dead. In his office, Gregory stared at a stack of unpaid bills. The fine had drained his remaining capital. Deborah watched from her window as Gregory paced the sidewalk, staring up at the building he could no longer control.
That's what defeat looks like.
The city's housing authority opened an investigation into his other properties. His reputation crumbled.
I don't have it. The building's tied up in legal fees. Just give me more time.
A week later, the court ordered him to pay Deborah's legal fees. The bill was as thick as her original lease. By the end of the month, Gregory accepted a low-ball offer for the building. The tenants now negotiated with a fair owner. That evening, Deborah opened the fireproof box one last time. She placed the signed ruling on top of the old lease and closed the lid. The fight was finally over. A few days later, a proper lease renewal arrived from the new management at the legal rate. Deborah sat down with a pen. She signed the new lease, then placed it inside the fireproof box, right next to the yellowed original. She locked the box, slid it onto the shelf, and allowed herself a small, quiet smile.
I am trying to organize my paperwork like you did. I even bought a fireproof box.
Scan everything. Save digital copies. And never let anyone tell you there's no record.
They sat together, leafing through Linda's papers. Deborah pointed out what to keep and what to shred. Linda laughed, the first easy laugh Deborah had heard from her in months. Later, alone, Deborah made her coffee and stood by the window. The building was quiet, the heat steady. She thought of the fireproof box on the shelf, and the note still tucked inside. Don't stop. She had kept her promise to herself and to everyone who believed. Months later, a moving truck idled outside. A young woman carried a box toward the building, looking nervous. Deborah met her in the hallway. The woman's eyes were the same as her own had once been, hopeful, but uncertain.
Welcome, I'm Deborah. Let me give you something that might help.
She pressed a small, blank notebook into the new tenant's hands, the same kind she had used herself.
Document everything. The lease, the walkthrough, every receipt. It's your home. Protect it.
The young woman looked from the notebook to Deborah, and a grateful smile broke through her uncertainty. Deborah nodded and stepped back, letting the new tenant enter her apartment. Outside, dusk settled over the building. Warm light glowed in the windows of the apartments that were still homes. On a high shelf inside, the fireproof box sat undisturbed. The lease, the video, the note, and now 10 more notebooks waiting. Deborah's building was no longer for sale. It was a place where tenants knew their rights and passed them on.